live when you're good to go, and
I did.
set.
I did.
Oh, we are live.
Nice. Yo, good morning. You sick of me yet? Welcome to the Stokastic.com NFL Strategy Show, Sims Edition, baby. I love this show. This is one where I think, every single week we do this, it puts us in a really good spot heading into the weekend. I will also say, Greg, you have Friday Night Football tonight. We just did a Showdown Strategy Show. Shout out to Ben for filling in for Danny. Late notice. We got it done. Good show. Check that out. You do have Friday Night Football, which is unique. The crazy thing to me, dude, we're 2 days away from what I like to consider the real start of the NFL season. It is right around the corner.
It's I can't believe you didn't consider last night the start, particularly because your Eagles were playing last night. We had last night's slate. We have tonight's slate. But yeah, this is the first main slate. I agree with you in terms of like the volume of my DFS action. The Sunday slate matters so much more than the Thursday night football or the Friday night football. Not that I don't play them or anything like that. I ended up playing actually more than I expected to last night because there was overlay on FanDuel. So I was jamming that in last second. But yeah, Sunday is really the big main slate. And I'm very much looking forward to that from a DFS standpoint and from just a watchable standpoint too.
I can't wait. I understand what you're saying that, yesterday, Eagles, Jalen Carter spitting on people and all that fun stuff. But what matters to me is like sit down and just watch a ton of games and then the 4:00 games. And then you got the nightcap. Do you know what the Sunday night football game is?
I haven't even looked at the schedule enough to know which game's Sunday night, which game's Monday night.
Ravens Bills to close out Sunday night.
For some reason I thought that was the Monday night game, but whatever. Doesn't I've just been so focused on the main slate. But yeah, there's a lot of really good games to open up the season.
Yeah. Vikings Bears should be interesting on Monday, or terrible. I don't know. St. Stephen, back to Stokastic NFL shows during my hikes. That's cool, man. I always enjoy to see what people are doing during these shows. Was it you? I don't know if it was you and me or Ben and me, where it turns out we just have like 85 viewers and listeners who are mailmen.
That was you. That was, I believe, you and Ben discovered that last year, which makes sense, right? It's like what jobs do people have where they have the most accessibility to listen to something audio? It stands to reason if you work in an office, you can't just be playing, fantasy football podcast out loud unless, maybe you got earbuds in or whatever. But yeah, it makes sense. Mailmen, anybody who's like Amazon drivers,
UPS, that type of stuff.
Yeah. Uber Eats, like that kind of thing. It would make sense.
Eric, I can only do Thursday, Friday shows. X-Ray Tech here. Okay. Cool. But remember, you can also watch them all after the fact. Never forget. Also, never forget, atone for your sins. Hit that thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't done so. Appreciate you guys doing that. If you like the content, you think it helps you out, maybe even entertains you during a long day at work, delivering mail, or anything else you may be doing in this wonderful country of ours, hit that thumbs up, subscribe, leave a comment down below. You're listening or watching after the fact. We got you. We see you. We know how this works. But here's the cool thing. I just checked, Greg, and the last update we had, since we last did any shows together for the main slate, we got updated projections and ownership last night.
And on top of it, we got some crazy injury news, which I have a little bit of a conspiracy on. We'll see what's going on. I think Christian McCaffrey is very live to not play on Sunday. And
unreal, man.
We've already had, you and I, the very first show of the season we did, I really like Jalen Coker as a value play. Shortly afterwards, he gets put on the injured reserve. Wednesday, you and I do the show together. Christian McCaffrey, we're hand building lineups. Christian McCaffrey shows up in a lot of those lineups. And now we're in a situation where Christian McCaffrey, at the very least, his status is up in the air, which is something worth talking about in a pretty significant way.
Yeah, I'm waiting for people to comment on our Wednesday video, the Christian McCaffrey now has a calf issue. But yeah, that was a huge development, man. As a matter of fact, that came out during, I think, when we were doing the live before lock yesterday.
Yeah.
I just didn't draw any attention to it because, when you're doing that show, we're kind of up against it. And we already got sidetracked. We spent much time bot swatting, as Jason gave me that sweet lingo. And fun show, tough slate for me. Great betting night, tough DFS night for me. Didn't have enough Dotson, but yeah, if Christian McCaffrey does not play, you and I have said this throughout the week. I mentioned it early. I mentioned it in July when I did a first look show. We mentioned it when we did the first look show last week. There's always the possibility, and we didn't think it would happen right now. There's always the possibility that a player gets hurt in training camp or, in a preseason game and opens the door to a massive value play that ends up being wildly overowned, or I should just say wildly owned. I thought we were in the clear, Greg. I thought by the time we did a Wednesday show that we wouldn't get any crazy surprises. And here we are with one of the best running backs in the league potentially not playing. He is on the main slate going up against the Seattle Seahawks, and they already have suffered injuries to Ayuk. I don't know about Jennings. Debo is gone. This is nuts.
There's also a little, there's more context to it too. And here's where I also have like a little bit of a conspiracy angle to it, where Christian McCaffrey, pretty similar to what happened last year, where we knew leading into the season, all right, he's limited in practice, but it was to open up the year. None of us took it all that seriously. And that game was on Monday Night Football last year.
Wait, can I guess your conspiracy?
Yeah.
Are you going to say that is why they traded for Brian Robinson and knew about this before we knew anything?
Yes. That's
okay.
That's
it just clicked right now. I was like, he's on to something. Yep.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking. Like the trade for Brian Robinson, it kind of came out of nowhere. And the 49ers have a decent amount of depth at running back if you assume that Christian McCaffrey is going to be healthy to start the season.
Right.
And then all of a sudden they trade for Brian Robinson. We find a little bit, a week afterwards, I'm trying to remember, like Brian Robinson, they traded for him about a week or so ago. Then all of a sudden Christian McCaffrey dealing with this calf issue. It's so similar to what happened at the start of last year where we didn't think all that much of it. All of a sudden he's limited in practice. You go, all right, veterans get limited in practice leading up to week 1 all the time. And then he barely plays the entirety of last season. And it's the exact same injury, the exact same listing on the injury report as well with the calf situation. I'm not saying definitively I think he sits, but last year when we found out McCaffrey, I thought there was a 0% chance. I legitimately think it's 50-50.
Crazy. Yeah, I mean, right? He was in he was in Germany getting stem cell treatment or plasma injections or something, and just missed a lot of the season. I think you're right. I don't know, but this could be rough. Let's get into it.
Yeah. And also, one quick thing I wanted to say, because Einstein says it's possible to see the Sims implications if we removed him and projected Brian Robinson as the starter. Sort of. It would be really difficult to figure out exactly, just because let's say we zeroed out Christian McCaffrey and then we put in Brian Robinson. Brian Robinson would project for a shit ton of fantasy points in that kind of scenario, because we saw this last year. Whoever ends up starting in the place of Christian McCaffrey, they just play almost the entirety of the game. So let's say you did this and you put Brian Robinson as the starter. The problem is Brian Robinson would be projected for nearly 0% ownership. So he wouldn't even show up in that many lineups. And then if we did go in and manually make changes to the contest generator, even then it would be difficult to force him into anything meaningful amount, even by doing significant boosts in the contest generator. So what would happen is just any single lineup that had Brian Robinson would end up showing up as a top lineup in the Sims. The data will all be updated as we get closer to Sunday. But for this particular scenario, it's so extreme that it would be really hard to accurately plan in advance for it. The easiest way to do it is just McCaffrey gets ruled out, the ownership, the projections all get updated. But this isn't like a wide receiver 2 is out. You put him for 0 fantasy points and give a few extra fantasy points to wide receiver 3. It would change the entire slate so dramatically.
How much do you think Garendo would get though? Like, are we convinced that this would be a bell cow? I think I think this is more of a strange situation than it's been in the past, where it's like Mitchell's the next man up, Mason's the next man up, Garendo's the next man up. Brian Robinson's still new to this offense. I know he's a running back and he's not a receiver or a quarterback or something like that, but what is the possibility that they don't actually have a full like bell cow workload in a spot like this? Not to mention, Brian Robinson is not priced like a backup running back that you'd see typically behind Christian McCaffrey. So I actually don't know if Brian Robinson was chalk and Christian McCaffrey was out, I more than likely come in very underweight on Brian Robinson.
Yes, we got Brian Robinson priced at $5,800 because the pricing came out so long ago that the assumption was he was going to be the starting running back for the Commanders at that point in time. So much has happened since the initial pricing came out. We went from Brian Robinson to being the expected starting running back to the Commanders to not knowing exactly what the running back rotation was going to be to it then being Brian Robinson. Oh, looks like he might not even make the Commanders roster, to him getting traded to the 49ers and now the McCaffrey situation. So long story short, Robinson is still $5,800. It's not like he's a 4K backup or anything like that. But as far as would he be a workhorse back, I think the answer is probably yes, just based on what we've seen from the 49ers in the past when somebody's out. And then also we do have the statement from the coaching staff. Shanahan said, pulling up the date here, August 24th, so August 24th, he said that Brian Robinson, we brought him in to be our number 2 back. Isaac Garendo will be the team's number 3 behind him. So that to me indicates that should McCaffrey get ruled out, Robinson starts, and I would assume he's a workhorse at that point.
Okay. I'm not convinced, but that's a convincing argument nonetheless. How do we want to do this? I always forget when we start the show. I really don't. We did it a couple ways last year. What we did was the one way we would do it was take a look at the lineup builds to see what type of like 2 tight ends we had first, this and that. Then we would just go through exposures and kind of work our way backwards from there. The one thing I know we always do is like, all right, how many QB plus 3s, how many QB plus 2s? And I'm looking at this right now. If there's one thing I see, it's a lot of QB plus 2, a little QB plus 3, fine with an onslaught here or there. Not an insane amount of run backs, but a decent amount, probably like 30% from what I'm seeing. Is it possible to zoom in so we can look at how many double tight end type lineups we're getting?
Yes.
We could always just go to exposures and look at how many, like that'll tell us too, but however you want to do it.
That's a pretty easy way to do it. One thing I will add, so a couple of thoughts on the double tight end lineups, which there are very few of them for this slate. I could just tell already by looking at the exposures. A lot of the slates through the sims that we run through here, you'll end up seeing like 40% of lineups with double tight ends. But you could just see here from the exposures on screen that it's like 10 to 15% of lineups that have double tight ends. So a few thoughts on that. First off, from some of the research from our data team, that's one of the most underutilized lineup builds that there is in NFL DFS is tight ends in the flex. That is a lineup type that has far more top 1% lineups than what the field plays. Also, onslaught stacks, QB plus 3 and more also are lineup types that are massively underutilized by the field. Now, with all of that said, the pricing is so soft for NFL week 1 that you don't really have to go super aggressive with massive stacking to create more correlation for upside. The pricing kind of takes care of that for you. And then also, because the pricing is so soft, it isn't quite as necessary to go to cheap tight ends in order to find some of that extra salary. So there are still some lineups that are showing up here with double tight ends. Like we're looking at, like 15% or so of lineups of double tight ends, but it is less than you would normally see from the Sims. And it's just because of the pricing being so soft for week 1.
Right. The more efficient pricing gets, clearly the more we're going to start to see dual tight ends, right? And by dual tight ends, I'm not talking like Kittle McBride. Yeah, you're going to see some value mixed in there along the way. There is one guy that I will be personally boosting. His name is Jatavian Sanders. But we can talk about that when we get there. It looks like we're not getting any of him right now at $2,900, Greg. I'm a bit surprised, but given that he only has a 21.5-yard receiving prop, I get that too. Let's take a look at quarterbacks and our stack exposures first.
Yeah, so looking at stack exposures really quick, one thing you'll notice here is, there's certainly some 3 stacks, but it's not that many. There's some of Baker Mayfield. He's in 4.7% of our top 150 lineups are triple stacks of Baker Mayfield. There's a couple with Brock Purdy. Those probably have some combination of Christian McCaffrey, George Kittle, and Juwan Jennings, but not really seeing as many triple stacks we normally would. It's because of those reasons that I mentioned before. But if we go to our quarterback exposures, you will see here that here's what we have as far as overall QB exposures. 3 guys that are showing up in at least 12% of lineups. Leading the way, it is Trevor Lawrence, who's also the chalk at the position. So we got 19% of Trevor Lawrence, just under 15% of Jaden Daniels Loughy, and then 12% of Kyler Murray, who's a little bit more contrarian at 5% ownership.
I'm looking at it now and seeing a few guys that I love, a few guys that make me a little bit nervous. Trevor Lawrence being one of those guys. Nobody's super popular. Still, even this is what I don't mind. Trevor Lawrence, 19%. Okay. What I mean by that is he's not my favorite quarterback by any stretch. However, it's 19%, Greg. It's not like we're getting 90% of a pitcher in MLB DFS where you're like, oh, shit, dude, I got a lot of this guy and it could go really bad. You're talking like less than a fifth of my lineups will have Trevor Lawrence. Do I love that he's my highest exposed right now? No, but Brian Thomas is reasonably priced and there's ways to get interesting with that stack. It's a pretty decent matchup against an inferior Carolina secondary. They have one guy in that secondary, but aside from that, not much. Jaden Daniels, obviously, Murray. If there's a spot or two that I'd want to get more of, it is Baker Mayfield and a Tampa onslaught, getting 5% of them. I think the Tampa onslaught, especially with Ibuka's price point, is very sensible. He's 5,200. Tua against Indy. Indy's got a decent secondary, but it's such a concentrated offense that we talked about it on Wednesday's show, that there may just be a path there where you could have like a Tua or Waddle or Achane, 2 of the 3, and have a really strong game. What I did notice, however, is our exposure to Daniel Jones came way down from Wednesday.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember when we're looking at the Sims the other day, Daniel Jones was in like 20% of lineups. We also, as more props came out, we definitely went ahead and, you get more information, projections get adjusted. We had Daniel Jones in our initial run of projections for close to 20 fantasy points. Now he's at 16.77. So that's a pretty dramatic decrease that will change how he looks in our data.
I'd like some Joe Flacco too, as always. I think that could be a really good spot against Cincy or a really bad spot, but you got to take some shots. I see you through a member for 46 months. All right. Almost 4 years, Clayton. Appreciate you. What is the theory on when not to use a run back? I think there's some nuance there, Greg, but I'm not sure there's ever just like a right answer on when not to use a run back.
Yeah. So in general, there's not a super strong there is some correlation between a team and the run back, but it's not as high as what people think it to be. So what ends up happening is when you look at the like overall data on certain lineup builds, it's not like some sort of crazy underutilized type of lineup, whereas there are other sorts of lineups like double tight end, onslaught stacks, QB +3. Those do tend to be a little bit underutilized by the field. So there's not like a certain scenario where it's like a slate where it's like, oh, this slate use a run back, this slate you don't use a run back. I would think of it more this way. The time that I wouldn't want to use a run back is if I just don't like options from the other side of the game. If there's a stack that I like, let's say, for instance, like I think that this is a pretty good spot for the Bengals offense in terms of upside. I think there are playable guys from the Browns, but I don't love anybody from the Browns. So if you're just playing somebody from the other side of the game just to have it in your lineup, I wouldn't force in somebody you actively don't think is a good option for the slate just for the sake of having a run back. That's like the most reasonable way I could answer when you don't want to have a run back if you're handling the lineup.
Yeah, definitely. And you've seen a lot more lineups win without a run back lately. It isn't to say that it's a bad idea. And sometimes, sometimes the best lineups could be like a skinny stack with 2 run backs, or even a secondary stack where you just have like secondary game stack with 2 from one team and 1 from the other. There's definitely ways to do it. You don't have to, but I like some of those builds from time to time. No issues with them. To me, I'm more comfortable with that than I am with the 2 tight ends and the QB +3 onslaughts, but I need to get more comfortable with the onslaughts because we've seen a lot of our subs take down monster contests with Sims lineups that had the onslaughts. We've seen Millie wins with the onslaughts. So, it's tough to process that and be okay with it mentally, but it is definitely the way to do it.
Yeah. The other thing to consider too is it's something like I don't have all of the data in front of me, but this is roundabout correct. It's something like 3% of the field plays 3+ stacks, so onslaught stacks, but it's like 7% of them end up being the top 1% of lineup. So it's a very underutilized stack type, but it still only is a top 1% lineup 7% of the time. So a lot of people just be like, oh, but that lineup doesn't win. Yeah, because it's not represented all that frequently. If people aren't playing it as often, it's not going to show up in the top of G. It just has less chances to win. But it doesn't mean it isn't a great lineup type, and it is certainly being underutilized by the field. If the field all of a sudden started playing like 20% 3-man stacks, you would probably see something like 25 to 30% of 3-man stacks be top 1% lineups, and you would see them win GPPs all the time. But it is certainly a very valuable stack type that more people should be utilizing, and just saying like, oh, this did not win a contest last week, therefore I don't want to play it. It's not really looking at the full picture.
Another thing too is when you're doing these stacks, it doesn't need to be like QB +3 pass catchers. There's plenty of lineups we've seen where the onslaught, including a running back, wins. And I bet if you went into you're already one step ahead of me. I bet you we already have some of these where it's running back, pass catching running back with quarterback +2 pass catchers.
Yeah, look at our top lineup. The reason I went to this page, number one, I've done these shows with you enough. I knew where you were going to go with it. But the other part too is I knew just from looking at the lineups page, our number one projected lineup right now by Sim ROI, it's a Brock Purdy triple stack with Christian McCaffrey, with George Kittle, and with Juwan Jennings in it. So obviously there's still variables here that need to be sorted out. Is Christian McCaffrey playing or not? But just as of right now, with the assumption that he's going to be playing and that he's woefully underpriced, this is our top lineup by Sim ROI that we got in this run of lineups. It's that same exact scenario.
Yeah, you know which one's really interesting to me? Look at that Arizona Kyler QB +3. It's down, keep going down right there. I'll tell you, if this just does turn in one of those games where Arizona goes in and annihilates a bad Saints team, which you never know. I have no confidence. I didn't bet this game because I just have no confidence in Arizona, but they should win, and they do have playmakers. I'm assuming is that a Connor, Marvin Harrison, Trey McBride?
It is. Those are the 3.
That could go nuts.
Yeah, let's see. Who else is in the lineup? Jaylen Warren, Brian Thomas, Tyreek Hill, Ibuka, and then the Seahawks defense rounding out that lineup. But yeah, there's an Arizona onslaught stack. It hasn't gotten filled yet, but I do have an order. I'm trying to bet on the Saints for this weekend, maybe against my own
that's right. You are. You did text me that at like late the other night. We're talking about this Saints and volume coming in on them from some, we'll call them whales. But yeah, so those type of builds. Can you scroll down, see if we can find another QB +3? Now I'm curious what they look like because I like those first 2 a lot.
Yeah, I'll just pretty quickly set up a filter here. So the QB +3 stacks, here is another one with Kyler Murray and Marvin Harrison, Trey McBride, and James Conner. Here's a QB +3 with a run back. It is McCaffrey with Jennings, Kittle, And who's on the Seahawks? Oh, here we go. JSN is in the lineup as well. So you got Jackson Smith and Jigba completing the stack there. Here's a Bengals one, so a little bit different from the 49ers and Cardinals ones we've looked at. We got Burrow with Brown, Chase, and Higgins, and no run back there. So there's like a true Bengals onslaught stack. We actually built a pretty similar one to that on the Wednesday show.
Can you read off the Burrow one with the actual lineup?
Yeah, so the Burrow lineup, it's Burrow, Chase, Kamara, Brown. It's funny, I said Chase, and then I realized that actually encompasses 2 players. So Chase Brown and Jamar Chase.
Okay.
T. Higgins, Deebo Samuel, Brenton Strange at tight end, Igbuka, and the Texans defense.
All right. So you still have Igbuka in there. You still have a couple decent players. All right. Man, that's, again, one of those lineups that if Cincinnati comes out, gets out to a fast start and scores 45 points, it's going to be those 3 guys. So that's why onslaughts can work. Thanks for pulling that up, because that really, when you look at it like that, it's not all that bad.
No,
I mean, wants to do it.
Yeah, they're pretty reasonable. Like, there aren't guys in those lineups who I'm like, oh, I don't like that guy as an option for the slate. When you and I, like, even without all the updated data that we have for today, when we were just building lineups the other day on Wednesday, the guys who are showing up in these lineups are kind of all guys that we liked the other day. You know, like we liked getting to Chase Brown. We liked getting to Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. I don't know how many lineups we built with Trey McBride at tight end, but you and I talked about
Connor and Harrison.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's all obviously Christian McCaffrey, somebody who we like. I'll be interested to get some of your thoughts when we go to wide receiver about actually kind of the 49ers in general with what we want to do with Christian McCaffrey. And then Juwan Jennings, that situation now that looks like I don't think for all of the conspiracy theory I have about Christian McCaffrey, I kind of have a conspiracy theory on the other. I think Juwan Jennings is totally fine. I don't think there was anything ever wrong.
You just think he wanted those $3 million in contract incentives or some type of other, extension?
I think he's 100% totally full, good to go for week 1.
Eric, great point, man. And that's kind of what we're talking about here is he said the nice thing about onslaughts is you're only trying to get one thing right. You want a high scoring team compared to trying to find multiple. Yeah, you compare it somewhat to a baseball stack, right? The Phillies the other week had that 19-run game. You remember that, where the Schwarber 4-home run game? And I think they had like 8 home runs as a team. If you just onslaught 5-man stack the Phillies, and obviously it's a little different here, but you get the point. You get that one thing right. Now your focus is so much more narrow. When you're going with a skinny stack, you're right, Eric. You want that skinny stack to produce, or even a 2-man, but then you need a lot of other variables. With the onslaught, the problem is that you need it to be like 40 points or 35 points concentrated around a few guys. But also if you get that, especially, Greg, with teams like Arizona or Cincinnati, I'd argue even San Francisco, you pretty much know, or Miami, you know where the volume's going.
Yeah, it's there's certain teams that and same thing. Like, you asked me that question on, actually, it might have been somebody in YouTube chat asked us it in the initial show that we did together, where somebody said, what are the most concentrated offenses? We kind of went like division by division and tried to figure out who the most concentrated teams were.
That was fun. Yeah.
Yeah. And there's a handful of them where it's just like, hey, if this team scores a lot of points, the Dolphins score a lot of points, Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, HM, those are your guys scoring fantasy points. It's not like, oh, look, Malik Washington led the team in receiving yards today.
Which would suck. But yes, it's very unlikely that that's going to happen. All right, let's take a look at these other positions here. Before we do, today's show sponsored by Epic. Now, I talked about them yesterday. I'm pretty excited about this one for a couple of reasons. One, their picks format is actually, Greg, I don't know if I told you this, actually available in Pennsylvania. So how about that? You got the PA availability from me, which is fantastic. You have a ton of different formats. It's all peer-to-peer, which means you can't get limited if you're actually sharp. No, it's the same format as we discuss right here on a DraftKings Millie Maker in DFS. It's a peer-to-peer style game where you can either pick them or fade the other people who have put their contest entries in, or you have the 50-50 or tournament mode where 50-50 would be the same thing as it would be in a DFS, contest, in the respect that, hey, $5 lineup, right? With any of your picks, $9 returns, so long as you finish in the top 50% of the field. Tournament structure, similarly, same way there. You're playing against the field, not against the house. And if you use code ODDS1, ODDS1, 100% deposit bonus up to $50. That's a solid one, Greg. Like I said, you don't get a lot. I saw you tweeted about it yesterday. You don't get a lot of sites out there, apps out there that, number one, are run and designed by people like Matt, who actually understand the industry and understand the problems within the industry, specifically limits and being against the house, and they just cut you off the moment you start to not only win. Shit, you could just be getting on some books, you should just be getting good closing line value. But not the case here, man. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, and one thing you said there that really resonates with me, I tweeted this out the other day as well. So this is Matt Downs' product. If you guys I assume a lot of you probably know who Matt Downs is. His Twitter handle is @CMattDowns. We need more products in our space that are built by people who actually are gamers, are bettors. Like Matt is somebody who's done Pick'em for a while. He's somebody who's been a bettor in the past as well. So he has a better idea of what it is that we actually want as a product. So one thing that is really nice now, Loughy, is that we're at a point where like we could pick and choose who it is that we actually want to sponsor our shows and what products it is that we want to tell you guys that we like. And I really, really do like, in general, the idea of peer-to-peer being the form of, playing your money against somebody else as opposed to against the house, for the primary reason that you said before, which is you don't have to deal with limits. That's become the most annoying thing, whether you're playing at a traditional rec book or whether you're doing like a pick'em game somewhere. You constantly run into limits playing against the book. And now people are creating these other games where it's like, hey, it's peer-to-peer. There is no house that's running the game in the same way. Therefore, you don't have to deal with like any kind of absurd limit. So Matt's putting a really cool product together, and I really would like to help him grow that product. So I'm really stoked that we're working with him this year.
Me too, man. And you're right. I look at it like this: whenever say the app that you're playing on or the site, whenever they don't benefit from a specific outcome, it's better for us, right? Where they are unaffected by the outcome is always going to be better for us. Plus, I would suggest you guys, at the very least, download the app, EPICK, pronounced Epic, and just poke around in there, if nothing else. And then when you're ready, or if you're ready now, use ODDS1, ODDS1, and that's 100% deposit bonus up to $50. Check it out. Yeah, we're pretty excited about this one, as Greg said, and happy to be partnering up here with Epic. So check them out, guys. All right, let's get back to it and talk running backs. I want to see. It should be a lot of McCaffrey and Chase Brown still, but let's just assume McCaffrey plays. Who else do we have in here that we're getting a lot of?
Yeah, so it actually has smoothed out a little bit. So Christian McCaffrey still showing up in 29% of lineups, but it's not any sort of massive stand on him where he's pulling 33% ownership. One thing that we're definitely going to have to discuss at length on the Sunday show, both me doing my lineup portion segment and you doing the game-by-game breakdown with Ben, is it's a little bit too far out to really speculate on it at the moment, but what do we do if Christian McCaffrey is still questionable heading into Sunday? Because then you're not going to know his status probably until after the early game's lock. So that's something where like the late swap tool could come in really handy in our sims. But as of right now, and some of the uncertainties around McCaffrey, if I just had to go into lock right now and say, what do you want to do with Christian McCaffrey? My favorite way to play some of these sorts of scenarios where I really don't know what to expect, I just align myself with the field. Like, I don't want to have my slate made or broken based on this unknowable situation that's completely outside of our control. I do feel best about just aligning myself with the current exposure on McCaffrey, and my slate will be won or lost elsewhere.
I'm okay with that. I would also point out, though, that you can position yourself. I think you can at least position yourself to not get killed by McCaffrey potentially being out. Like, worst case scenario is you just swap down from McCaffrey to Brian Robinson and you leave salary on the table. I don't think that's the optimal play, but you would set Plan B smoothies. Loughy, you never read my birthday super chat. Thank you, brother. As always, not my birthday, but I appreciate you thinking of me and keeping the bid alive. But if you look at some of the prices here, just in the flex, I'm on St. Brown 71, Josh Jacobs is 67, Gibbs is 77, Kyron Williams is 6,500. There's at the very least, we have a decent amount in the late window where you're not screwed. It's not like there's only 2 games and there's no good swaps. There's going to be a ton of really solid swaps. If you had McCaffrey and he ends up being out, how many of those teams do you think you would swap to Brian Robinson and just say, I'll leave, let's say 1,500 on the table?
So I don't know that I would be leaving 1,500 on the table. There would just be other spots where I upgrade. So it'd be like some Christian McCaffrey ends up becoming Brian Robinson. And then you probably have scenarios where it's like, lineups that have like Juwan Jennings become JSN or something like that. So I don't think it would just be a bunch of money that gets left on the table. It would be other spots that get upgraded. Because like you said, this isn't one of these slates where there's 1 or 2 4:00 games. Like there are going to be options to swap to.
Also, we have the late swap tool. Super easy. Just load your lineup file from like DraftKings into there. And then it takes minutes, like 2 minutes. And you don't have to, it's not as much of a time crunch. Inactives are coming out an hour and a half before the game time, unless there's a weird like late scratch, leading up to start. This isn't like basketball, Greg, where you're like, oh, am I going to get it in? No, with late swap in the NFL, this is still a super valuable tool, except in this case, your heart's not beating 150, beats per minute. You're just like, all right, plug it in, pick the lineups I want, and I'm good to go. Plenty of time. So utilize that tool.
Here's one of my favorite things about just player takes. And like these 2 messages came in nearly back to back in the YouTube chat. CW89, I think CMC is going to crush. This news should help lower his ownership. Then just a couple of messages later, you see St. Stephen. If I had to lock right now, I'd have 0% of CMC.
I am, and I love that as well. I'm personally more in St. Stephen's camp. And here's why. Not even because I think McCaffrey's going to play and get 2 carries. Not even because I don't think he's underpriced. First of all, I would need to see ownership. If everyone has the same thinking of St. Stephen, then I would more than happily take some risks and get over the field on McCaffrey. But let's just say everything stays the way it is and it comes up to a lot, whatever. There's so many good value, or not value, but underpriced options at running back. This isn't really like, man, if I don't play Christian McCaffrey, I have to play Jaylen Warren everywhere. No, you can go to so many. Like, I don't even see we have 8% Jonathan Taylor. You don't think I'd be happy to get more Jonathan Taylor on a slate like this? I absolutely would. There's so many guys. We're only getting 10% James Conner. I love James Conner this week. So yeah, I don't think we're going to be I don't think we'll be in dire straits here, regardless of the news.
Yeah. I mean, there are a lot of one other thing that's kind of interesting. Chase Brown's ownership has come down quite a bit from when we did the show the other day. We've now got Kamara 18% owned, Achane 23% owned, Chase Brown down to 19% owned. The ownership, other than McCaffrey being 33% owned, which I do think his ownership is going to come down as a result of this news. Like, it only has one direction to go when it's already this high. But yeah, you're seeing Pollard's 11% owned now, Warren's 10% owned, Connor 16%, Taylor 13%, Jacobs 11%. There are a lot of good running back options.
Even Bucky Irving, we're getting 4% of, right? I mean, I think Bucky's probably a little overpriced just given the salaries on some of these other guys. You look at Kamara, Achane, Brown, Connor, and Taylor, all in that 6K range. Same with Josh Jacobs, although that's a more difficult matchup now that Detroit's healthier on defense. But, even so, Bucky Irving could have himself a game. If any of these guys, Kamara, Achane, Brown, Connor, Taylor, Irving, even Jacobs, if any of them had a big game, would you be sitting here afterwards scratching your head and be like, man, I never saw that coming?
No, not at all.
Right.
There's legitimately like, I don't know, 10 running backs that I think have a pretty good chance to be the highest scoring on the slate.
I couldn't agree more. Yeah, it's a lot of them for sure. And we didn't even mention Bijan. I know he's expensive, but Bijan might just have 25 touches in this game. So it's nuts. Eric, Kamara, I would. Yeah, I guess, but also Kamara could just get you there on PPR alone, and we've seen him do it many times in the past. Do you want to look at wide receivers?
Yeah, let's go ahead and look at wide receivers. And you'll see here we've got two rookies that are showing up in a ton of lineups for us. Ted McMillan is in 55% of lineups. We got Egbuka now showing up in 50% of lineups.
I love it.
Yeah, they're also both pretty popular. 22% ownership to McMillan, 18% to Egbuka. So they are the chalk options at wide receiver. It makes sense to me, especially when you consider the injury scenario. So you've got McMillan. Since pricing has come out, Adam Thielen got traded, and then on top of it, Jalen Coker got hurt. Then for Egbuka, the pricing was kind of set as if Chris Godwin was going to be playing. That isn't the case. So these are the two wide receivers that just stand out from players being out standpoint since pricing came out that do stand out the most.
It really came up though on McMillan and Egbuka. I'm not surprised at all. We talked about them a lot, right? Actually, we were already getting a lot of McMillan on Wednesday, but now more Egbuka. You're not going to have Chris Godwin. Do you think now that these guys are getting the ownership that they are? There's a gnat around me. Do you think that they are getting that ownership that we come in on? Well, you know what? No, because it's not. We're still heavily overweight to them. I thought it was higher. I'm looking at it now. They're getting owned, but we're still getting a lot more of those guys, which means there's real leverage there. 30% leverage on both of them.
Yeah. I mean, they look like the two best value plays on the entire slate, which I don't really have an issue with. I mean, these are already highly drafted rookies that we were expecting big roles for them no matter what kind of the situations were to open up the year. And now they've got even more advantageous situations than were otherwise expected to be. So McMillan, Egbuka, I don't have any kinds of issues with either of them. We were looking at the props the other day. McMillan, at least last I looked, his receiving yard prop was 56.5.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's about as high as other guys on the slate.
It's a good way to look at it. Yeah. Like these guys are getting legitimate, like even in some case, wide receiver 1 receiving yard props. Drake London came up though. I don't remember us getting 22% Drake London or even close. Do you?
No, I don't have an issue with it either, though. I do think that game should be pretty high scoring.
Me too.
London, he was showing up in some lineups the other day.
Not a lot, though, I don't think. Yeah.
Yeah, and I do think also when we were hand building lineups, I think we might have put him in as a runback to a Tampa Bay stack that you and I
took
made.
him out. I took him out before we ran it, but we were going to. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think London's also underpriced. If you consider him at $6,500 compared to, guys like Tyreek Hill, JSN, Marvin Harrison, he's marginally more expensive than them. But think like if you're doing, redraft leagues or if you're doing best ball, how much higher he goes than some of those other guys. Like even Mike Evans is more expensive than Drake London. Drake London was going significantly higher.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. Like a round and a half ahead. Well, more than that. Mike Evans' ADP came up once we got the Godwin news. But yeah, I was grabbing Evans in the 40s prior to that.
Yeah.
I have no problem getting to some Malik Neighbors here. I think 7K flat works well for us. I don't know if you have any arguments there. The only spot I'd like to get more of, and you just mentioned him, it is Mike Evans. Like Mike Evans to me is the tried and true wide receiver 1 in this offense that will be without Chris Godwin. Egbuka looks great, but Evans is, mid 6K. This guy, when healthy, mind you, he missed like 4 games with that hammy last year. When Mike Evans is healthy, him and Baker Mayfield have an insane connection. And this Atlanta secondary last year gave up the second most passing yards to opposing passers, the most touchdown to most passing touchdowns. Like, that could be a great spot. So it's just a deep position. Tyreek Hill, Marvin Harrison, Jamar Chase. I don't see much Ricky Pearsall, but I'd like to get more of him as well, especially if McCaffrey sits. What a deep position it is this week.
Yeah, so probably like some of the same reasoning. I prefer Juwan Jennings to Ricky Pearsall, though. Another thing, too, I don't know if it's changed now because of the situation with McCaffrey, but I had tweeted about some of the 49ers pass catching props the other day. This was, once again, before there was any word of McCaffrey being limited at practice. But at the time, Jennings had quite a bit higher of a receiving prop than Pearsall. And then Pearsall's receiving prop had even dipped. I saw it 39.5 on Ricky Pearsall. That may have come back up now that McCaffrey is dinged up. But I'm definitely concerned with how low his props are on Pearsall.
It is weird. He's at 44.5. But I also think there's just an unknown factor here. Like, Jennings is at 50.5, 51.5. Pearsall's at 44.5. And what's the difference in price point?
Yeah, so you've got
Pearsall's 45. I know that.
Yeah, so Jennings is 49, Pearsall is 45. So $400 price gap.
Okay. Yeah, it's fine. Kittle is at 63.5.
$5,800 is his price point.
Kittle.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, we'll see, man. I don't know. But McCaffrey was at 36.5. Let me see when I update this if McCaffrey and these guys have changed. This was pre-update. So McCaffrey, nope, this is all, they're all still the same. So McCaffrey still does have props up on a bunch of books. Man, 36.5 receiving yards for McCaffrey. So if you take that out, things look different.
Yeah. I have a couple of bets on McCaffrey. I think I bet him under 4.5 receptions and under 39.5 receiving yards. By the way, very funny joke by CW.
I had to put it up on the screen. Yeah. Solid.
But yeah, as far as McCaffrey props go, they already are starting to dip.
Okay. I'm not shocked. All right. So, and for those of you guys who are curious, we've Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday shows are all different for a reason. Tuesday's first look show, Ben and I, it's like a super ground floor cursory look, digging into the matchups, the players, position by position. Wednesday, Greg and I are actually building out lineups to see what the slate and the salaries are giving us. I think it's an important show. It does a lot for me. And then Friday, today, now once we have the projections refined, of course, the McCaffrey question mark and a few, we're going to be hanging in the balance. But this type of show allows us to see what lineups look the best and what type of builds are simming out the best. Also, what our exposures look like, where we're overweight, underweight. If you watch them and you put all of them together, you should be able to pull some really valuable, I hope at least, some valuable information from it. I know I do. And of course, Sunday, we have the long live stream. But if you guys just wanted to use some of these tools for yourself, which, I think a lot of times people will watch these shows, they may be new to the channel, and then they say, all right, they'll always be free. But if you wanted to jump in on the tools, we still have these deals going that expire in just a couple of days. 30% off any monthly NFL sub. That's weekly, that's core or max. And we just upped the amount of lineups you can run in the contest generator for core, which you guys will be happy with that. For tonight's showdown slate, monster contest, only $1. If you wanted to jump in on that, you're someone that's just like, hey, you know what? I'm new. Let me just try it out. What's $1? I've spent much worse than $1 on many other things that I shouldn't have. Not here. Or 10% off any yearly package. I said to Ben earlier today on the show for the showdown slate, Greg, and by the way, you guys don't have to put a promo code in. If you click any of the links in the description or tap them on your phone, it'll preload the promo in there for you. But I said to Ben, I was surprised how many people took advantage of the yearly 10% discount, but it makes sense in the event they're like, well, I was just going to pay monthly and now I'll save a lot more money doing it this way. So yeah, that's what we got.
Yeah. I mean, we've also had a lot of people who have, used our tools, especially the Sims tools. There was a point in time where they were very new. And, relatively speaking, they're new to other things that have been available in the DFS space. But I think there's a lot of people who've just been around for a minute and know that they're going to be using our Sims tools for the entire year. And that's why we had, more people sign up for the yearly packages than we thought we're going to.
Yeah. So check it out, guys. 30% off a month, any month. Tonight's slate for $1 or 10% off the entire year. Core or Max NFL or All Access for all sports. Can you scroll down on wide receivers before we close this one out at tight end?
Yeah. So going down a little bit at wide receiver, you can see that a few other wideouts that are showing up in about 10% of lineups. We've got some pay up guys here. Tyreek Hill, he's showing up in 13% of lineups. We're a little bit underweight to the field on Jamar Chase, now 12%. So one thing that has happened since earlier in the week is Chase Brown's ownership has come down. So I think one of the things that our simulations really liked about Jamar Chase was that he kind of served as some leverage off of Chase Brown when Chase Brown was projected for nearly 30% ownership. But now that Chase Brown's ownership has come down, our ownership in the Sims has come down on Jamar Chase, and then it's gone up on Chase Brown. It just kind of, without our projections changing, just because of the ownership changing, it's made Chase Brown look a little bit better and Jamar Chase look a little bit worse, just because of what the field is doing.
Terry McLaurin, interesting here. Not a lot of him. He's 6,200. Cortland Sutton, 6K flat. Some contrarian options down there based on ownership. Sutton actually getting a lot more than I'd think. But yeah, you look down there. I'm excited about this slate. We'll have it on Sunday once we get – this is important too. We're going to know whether the inactives might not be out yet. Well, they will for live before lock from the 11:30 to 1. But the show I do, and I think, are you doing one before me?
So here's the overall, just let people know what all the schedule is for content that I'm going to be putting out. So I've already put up breakdowns for the showdown slate. Those are up as shorts. I'm also going to be doing breakdowns for both FanDuel and DraftKings, as well as Owner's Box for the main slate on Sunday. I'm going to put those pinned to my Twitter page. And then on Sunday, when we get to the main block of Live Before Lock, I'm going to be doing lineup building by myself. Then it's going to be Ben and Loughy doing the deep dive where they go through all of the games. And then finally, it's going to be Spags and Eric doing the final Live Before Lock breakdown where they go over any final projection changes, ownership changes, their favorite options by position. So that's going to be encompassing all of the content that we have coming out for DFS.
That's a lot. We got a lot going on. Knockout said, you got me for a month with the NFL package. This is so much fun, but got much to learn. Yeah, that's what makes this fun, though. Like that's what makes it's the puzzle that you're trying to solve. Utilize the tools. You can make some adjustments, dig in, see how the ROI boosts work, how the entry manager works. Greg, by the way, did tutorials on these brand new revised tutorials, guys. Highly suggest you check them out on the YouTube channel. The best way is just go to our Stokastic channel and then go to playlist and you'll see learn. Josh did a great one on the entry manager too that I watched yesterday because we got some new stuff for that. But where are we at on tight ends before we wrap this one up?
Yeah, so tight ends, this is pretty much the exact same situation that we were looking at the other day in terms of the pricing is soft enough to where it's not all that difficult to spend up for the top tight ends who really project much better than everybody else at the position. In fact, you just compare like Brock Bowers projecting for 17.62 fantasy points at $6,500. Look at Drake London, for example, who's showing up in lineups at $6,500 a wide receiver. So 17.63 fantasy points is the projection for Drake London at $6,500, and it's 17.62 for Bowers at tight end. So we're looking at 1/10 of a fantasy point, 100th of a fantasy point difference between the two of them. So it's very, very similar at the same price point. So Trey McBride, George Kittle, and Brock Bowers all essentially are priced the same as some of these comparable wide receivers. But then you look at the drop off at them compared to like the cheaper tight ends. And, like Brenton Strange, who shows up in lineups, stretch for 8.5 fantasy points on a slate where pricing is pretty soft. You spend a couple $1,000 extra and you're getting 2x the fantasy points. So in general, George Kittle, Trey McBride, Brock Bowers, that's the bulk of the tight end exposure. If you do want to go cheap, Njoku's the one who stands out the most. He's showing up in a chunk of lineups. It's kind of only those 4 tight ends that show up meaningfully.
That's it. Yeah. And then once you get to like your 6%, 7%, Brenton Strange, Cade Otton, that's where I mentioned Jatavian Sanders. That's where I would want to get on him, like 5-6%. No interest in trying to get overweight on a slate where, or not, I mean, overweight, but you know what I mean? Like super heavy on him, because as you just articulated nicely, you don't need to go heavy punts at tight end. You just don't need to do it. So would I like to get him up there in like that Brenton Strange, Cade Otton, Tucker Kraft range? Yeah, and I think you can do that with maybe there's a tight end that's cheap that you want to take a stand on. But by taking a stand, I'd be very careful going, overweight and then dramatically changing the complexion of this position. Because as Greg mentioned multiple times, there are just so many ways to save salary with great players at other positions that you don't actually need to do it at tight end this week.
Yeah, there isn't that much. Like, I know I hear you on somebody like Jatavian Sanders potentially having a better opportunity, and he could be worthwhile as a punt. I just don't know what's needed for this slate.
That's what I'm saying. But that's why I'm saying I'd rather just get him in the same punt range as like the 5-6% other guys that I have in that same price range, instead of getting crazy on him. I just want him to be in that same mix as like the Otton, Kraft, and Strange at 5%. That's all. Which would likely just bring them down a little bit, and then balance it out.
Anything else you want to look at really quick before we wrap up?
No, that's it. It's a fun show. As always, I already put that up. We can streamline it, of course, as we always do going forward. But no, yeah, look, man, this week 1, we're going to learn a lot after this week. We're going to figure things out. We still got some injuries on the horizon. Go back and check any of the ones you missed. Maybe if you want, there's plenty of time to do so on the channel. Check out the perfect lineup that Josh and I did. All of the tutorials Greg did, I think, are going to be super helpful. And check out Epic, man. Like I said, awesome format, awesome app. I think this is going to end up being like the future of these pick'em style games where people, you don't have to play against the house anymore. So if you don't have anything else, Greg, we can get out of here, baby.
No, just like the video, subscribe to the channel if you guys haven't already, and we'll see you on Sunday.
Bye-bye.